the media that's supposed to do a good job to tell the truth, well, they're going into that direction, which is let's kind of twist it and change it and not talk about it.
How has this changed you? How is experiencing that material and having to play it out changed you?
I'd give my life.
Jim Caviezel is a talented actor and a devoted man of faith. In a recent conversation with Jordan Peterson, he opened up about the challenges of navigating Hollywood, a place often resistant to faith, and the personal struggle of portraying Christian roles in a media world that can sometimes be overtly negative. Let's dive to the interview, and later we'll talk a little more.
I don't go to the devil to play the devil. I think many actors make that mistake. Go to God to tell you who the devil is. That's what I do. And it also gives me a protection.
What's the difference? What's the difference, Jim? Because that also bears on how you protect yourself from such things.
And are you saying the difference in the difference is that I play the truth. So if you go to the devil to play the devil will deceive you and put something up there that deceives the public. He'll always try to hide in the shadow. He'll always try, because he doesn't like the light, even though he's called the light, the illuminator, Lucifer. And he tries to mimic God. He tries to be like God. So there's always if God has love, and what we see as love, he creates lust. He's always trying to be like that. It's like Cain trying to rip off Abel, cutting the corners. And so committing to...
There's a tendency, even in Milton's, in Milton's Paradise Lost, there's been two readings of that forever. And one of them is that Milton's Satan is an anti-hero of the most profound sort, really the embodiment of evil. And the other reading is that Milton's Satan is a disguised hero and the eternal, what would you say, the eternal rebel against established order and someone to emulate in consequence, and that Milton somehow knew that and was coding that, not precisely secretly, but subtly. And I think that's a huge mistake. I mean, I've familiarized myself with Paradise Lost, and I think that Milton was an extraordinarily subtle writer and that he got everything as right as anyone ever has. But the reason I'm bringing that up is because, this is a complicated thing to untangle, but one of the things you see in Hollywood portrayals of villains, you saw this in The Silence of the Lambs, you see it frequently in mafia portrayals, is that the villain is inadvertently or even sometimes purposefully glorified. And it's partly because he's a rule breaker and has the attraction that goes along with that. But I also wonder too if it has something to do with what you were describing, is that the writers and the actors find themselves, when they're trying to portray evil, pulled towards falseness in that representation as part of the proclivity of evil to hide itself. And the danger in that is twofold. And one is the danger of deceiving the public as to the true nature of evil, because there's nothing heroic about it, quite the contrary. And the second danger I wonder about, there's all this speculation about Heath Ledger and the consequences for him of having played the Joker in such a dark manner. And, I don't know what to make of that, although I do think there is some danger in having to journey down a path of emulating evil in order to represent it. Now, you said that you turned to God, so to speak, to protect yourself against false representations of evil, but also in some ways to shield yourself. And it sounds to me reminiscent of what Tim's superiors mentioned to him when they said to him that his faith might protect him
love his question.
From what was... Okay, go ahead, man.
This is the best interview I've ever had in my life. I love your line of questioning and getting to what is real. My job is to give what I know to be absolutely certain and real. I hooked into Tim, has a childlike quality to him, and I stay with that innocence, and don't take that innocence as weakness. So when I read the scripture, I feel truth, good, evil, and I find the good, and let that just pierce the darkness. And it has to pierce. And I know what that light is. And I know that deception, that when I start hearing about, for example, in your life, when there's two masters here. One is from the evil, wicked side, but he comes in through your ego. And the other one is the light side that tells you what you might not want to hear, but you ought to hear. And it's not manipulative. It's truth. So I go to that side, then I pray, then I go through it. Like the Passion of the Christ, I looked at the Shroud of Turin. And there were two men, Christian Tinsley and Keith Vanderlyn, who are experts in makeup. And both of these men were agnostic. And they looked at the shroud that Mel Gibson presented to them. And one particular way, the way it is through the negative, however they were able to show it, you can see the track lines of Jesus. You can see the actual bamboo sticks that they used to initially hit him. And then you see the cat of nine tails, the track lines. They look like the Grand Canyon in your skin. And it shocked them. Now, these guys look at everything from decapitations, murders, and everything. Prior to this, I did a movie a long time ago in New York, and I was with Homicide, and I got to see the contortion of a face when someone gets murdered. And it's hard to watch. But when you start going into this, which is children, there is something that I can't even fathom, even with the protection of Almighty God, because it took me 2 years to get over this. 2 years, and a friend of mine, Debbie, came into the room, and at around 3 o'clock in the middle of the night, I was in a chair, and she heard me just weeping. Now, I would go into these black holes, and I have no idea, I don't remember it, but this was all of the screaming that I had to hear. I didn't want to hear it, but I had to hear it. And then I was able to transform that into the movie that you just saw when I asked Alejandro Monteverdi to move our DP to take it and show him my eyeball so you would see a 20-foot eye to see what Tim goes through to rip his heart out. Now, it's not like this is what I want to experience any more than I want to get on a cross and have my heart broken. I went through hypothermia. I had to have open heart surgery. I was electrocuted, struck by lightning. I understand the necessity of what I was going to have to go through could help bring people back to God, to wake them up. And quite frankly, more people now, Jordan, are more afraid of the devil than they are of God, because they want a happy Jesus. And the problem is that eventually, Jordan, we all are going to die. Eventually that is going to happen. But people, the power of the devil deceives to say, no, you're going to be around for a long, long time. And they never wake up. And eventually there is a judgment, and then you have to decide, or God decides, not how you want to see yourself anymore, but how God sees you. And how God sees you is who you really are. And so that's how I chose to go at this particular case. I had no choice but to go in. And I hear the screams in my heart. I hear the screams because of the agents that I got to work with, got to show me things. And one particular time, he says, "Are you sure you want to go further?" But I was weeping so hard. I said, this is what Tim goes through. This is what I got. I got to see it in order to go into there, to take people to a level of, will you do something? Will you do something? At some point, it ends for all of us. And so the pain in my heart is much better than the pain in the future. And if I have to see that to save my children, to motivate me to save my niece, to tell my sister, no, walking home at 13 years old from school is not a good choice. Not a good choice. My sister says to me, no, I want my daughter, to have the same kind of experience I have. And I said, no, not until this changes. You need to understand. So Anne, my sister, is a great mother, but she wasn't aware because the media that's supposed to do a good job to tell the truth, well, they're going into that direction, which is, let's kind of twist it and change it and not talk about it.
How has this changed you? How is experiencing that material and having to play it out changed you?
I'd give my life. in a heartbeat. Changed me. I'm less concerned about myself than I am about the hurt. I will tell you this right now. I would absolutely die. If this were to change the world and get rid of trafficking and pornography and all of the 8 arms of this octopus that has to be destroyed, the only way you can destroy it is take the head out. If that hit, I'd give my life for it in a heartbeat.
This conversation is something very strong that even expanded into other conversations with Jordan Peterson. Let's check it out, and then I'll bring a reflection on everything.
The truth of the matter is, with regard to the gospel accounts, that the mythological and the historical are inextricably cross-contaminated.
Sure.
There's no pulling out the historical Jesus, right? That's a non-starter. And why that is, I don't know. It's very mysterious. It's very hard to understand, as are the, let's say, the accounts of the resurrection. Okay, so what do I think about that? Well, I think that denying the historical reality of Christ I think that's just a fool's errand.
Of course.
I don't know why anybody would bother with it.
So a man exists called Jesus. We have that much.
Now, there's a claim that is attributed to Christ that he is the embodiment or the incarnation, the fulfillment, let's say, of the prophet and the laws.
Yes.
I think that's true.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. What does that mean? Well, I think it's in the Gospel of John. I think Gospel of John closes with a statement that's something like, if all the books that were ever written were written about the gospel accounts, that wouldn't be enough books to explain what had happened.
Yeah, if all the things that Jesus did.
Yeah. And there's a truth in that. The truth is that profound religious account is bottomless. Mm-hmm. And the biblical representations are like that. There's no limit to the amount of investigation they can bear, not least because the text itself is deeply cross-referenced. So there's an innumerable number of paths through it. It's like a chessboard. And so it's inexhaustible in its interpretive space.
That's true.
And that's a problem too, because it means it's also susceptible to multiple interpretations, including potentially competing interpretations.
I think a lot of people interpret Paul, for example, the earliest New Testament source, as saying that if Jesus did not literally rise from the dead, if there was not a man who stopped breathing and then started breathing again, then your faith is futile and you're still in your sins. That is, Christianity is undermined. Now, that means that, and Paul doesn't say, sort of believing that that's false is really bad. He says, if you do not believe this proactively, then your faith is futile.
That's the problem I have with that.
If you don't proactively believe that yourself, then I think when a Christian asks you, do you believe in the resurrection of Jesus? Are you a Christian? I think you must be committed to saying no, at least under that interpretation of Paul. And even if you're not sure, I mean, it's fine if I say to you, do you think that a man physically rose from the dead? And you say something like, well, I don't know. I mean, I wasn't there. But I think it has a lot of mythological significance, or I think that maybe it happened in a different sense, or it happened in the sense that good fiction happens, then fine. But it needs to begin with that caveat of the simple sort of, historically speaking, I don't know. And I know you don't like to pull out the historical Jesus from the mythological.
That's a good objection.
But it's an important question to ask.
No, of course. It's a very good objection. So I just did a seminar on the Gospels with a crew of about 8 people, and it was the same crew that walked through Exodus with me with a couple of variations. And we spent a lot of time on the resurrection accounts, for example. And of course, that was the toughest, morsel to chew and digest. The thing about the resurrection accounts is that they're all, so I could say something like this, which will just annoy people, but it doesn't matter. I believe the accounts, but I have no idea what they mean.
In their conversation, Jim Caviezel and Jordan Peterson shed light on the complexities of faith in an industry that often seeks to glorify darkness. Hollywood, for all its glamour, can be a place where truth and light are easily obscured by the shadows of fame and temptation. Jim's journey as a Christian actor is one of navigating these very challenges, not just as a performer, but as someone who seeks to live out his faith in a world that often turns a blind eye to it. In Hollywood, the portrayal of evil, whether on screen or in real life, can sometimes be glorified. We see this in films that romanticize villainy, casting darkness in a light that seems almost attractive. But the Bible reminds us that the thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. John chapter 10, verse 10. And the world's version of truth can often be deceptive. Jim's commitment to playing roles rooted in truth and light isn't just a career choice. It's a stand for something much deeper. He understands that to engage with evil, whether in a film or in life, requires strength and protection that only comes from God. The conversation also touches on the nature of suffering, something Jim has deeply experienced, especially in his portrayal of Christ in The Passion of the Christ. He describes the emotional and physical toll of immersing himself in such a role, yet he views it as a necessary sacrifice, a means of bringing others closer to God. In Romans chapter 5, verses 3 and 4, Paul writes, "Not only that, but we rejoice in our sufferings, knowing that suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and character produces hope." This is a reminder that even in the darkest of times, God can use our pain for His greater purpose. And then there is the truth about the spiritual battle we face every day. As Jim said, more people now are more afraid of the devil than they are of God. It's easy to become distracted by the world's temptations and to forget the eternal reality that we are here for a purpose far greater than ourselves. The enemy, though he may seem powerful, is already defeated. As it says in 1 John chapter 4, verse 4, "Greater is he who is in you than he who is in the world." This is the foundation of our strength as Christians. We do not fight alone. Finally, we are reminded that this life is but a moment in eternity, and the choices we make today have eternal consequences. As Jim reflects on the fleeting nature of life, he challenges us all to consider what truly matters. The power of the devil deceives to say no. No, you're going to be around for a long, long time, he says. But we know that it is appointed for man to die once, and after that comes judgment. Hebrews chapter 9, verse 27. We must live with an awareness of our eternal purpose, choosing daily to walk in the light of Christ. In the end, the conversation between Jim Caviezel and Jordan Peterson serves as a powerful reminder that we are called not just to perform in this world, but to stand firm in our faith, even when it's difficult, and to never shy away from the truth of the gospel. May we all be inspired to live boldly for Christ, shining His light in a world that desperately needs it. If this message resonated with you, take a moment to reflect on your own faith journey. How can you stand firm in your beliefs, even when the world challenges them? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this channel for more content that inspires and challenges you to live out your faith boldly. And remember, your voice and actions can make a difference. Let's continue to shine the light of Christ together.